Africa, a continent that for centuries has intrigued the imagination of those outside and has inspired love and awe from those within. A continent that could swallow up all of Europe, the United States, India, China, Brazil, and Argentina, and still have room to spare. The population of Africa is expanding more rapidly than any other continent in the world, yet even more remarkable is the growth of the African church. Sub-Saharan Africa is now teeming with over 500 million Christians. Nigeria is overwhelmingly the most populous country in Africa, with 160 million people crowded into its borders. All roads in Nigeria lead to Lagos, a city of 18 million destined to become the most populous city on earth within the next 50 years. It is right here in Lagos that God has raised up a vital center for leadership training for the church. The need for a training center such as WATS is enormous. Nowhere in the world has the church grown as rapidly over the past 50 years as in Africa, leaving over 80% of African churches with totally untrained pastors. That is why West Africa Theological Seminary focuses squarely on the two greatest needs of the church in Africa: the development of leadership and the discipleship of believers.
The African church now has over 400 million Christians, and that growth, as much as it should be celebrated, has come with a package of problems. Many who should still be undergoing discipleship and what have you have found themselves in position of leadership. And that itself, you cannot give what you don't have.
WATS is seriously addressing the needs of a growing church in Nigeria and in all of Africa. That is the whole reason for its existence, is to prepare leaders that will give structure and sound doctrine and practical training leadership to the next generation of Christian leaders.
About one half of WATS students are undergraduates, enrolled for Bachelor of Arts degrees in affiliation with the University of Nigeria. The other half are enrolled in one of 5 master's programs, or in our new Doctor of Ministry program. West Africa Theological Seminary has a very focused mission: to train men and women for holy living, carrying the gospel to the unreached, and for catalyzing national spiritual awakening. Since its founding in 1989, the primary focus at WATS has been on the spiritual life of both staff and students. Every student is placed in a one-to-one mentoring relationship and becomes a part of a weekly discipleship group and attends WATS chapel services. A second strong focus is on missions. All students are given heavy exposure to courses on missions, as well as internships and short-term missionary efforts that have sent out over 200 WATS students to mission fields both inside and outside of Nigeria.
WATS prepares these people in a special way, and they send them out to places where Christ has not been known. Many of them work among the Muslims, among the animists.
Springboard that was provided by WATS has been able to avail us to understand what mission is all about.
At WATS, quality academics is non-negotiable. In addition to around 20 resident faculty members, there are 30-plus part-time adjunct faculty members who teach master's courses, normally offered in 2-week modules.
One of the things I like about WATS is the modular form of education, which they really pioneered here in Nigeria. Using this program, WATS is able to invite academics and scholars from all over the world who can come and give a 1-week or 2-week intensive course, and thus expose their students to some great scholars from all over the world.
I found the students to be intellectually challenging in their questions, in their thinking. It's a delight to not only teach them, but to engage them in a classroom. And I find them to be thoughtful. I find them to be prepared.
WATS is governed by an 18-person governing council, including a number of distinguished Nigerian leaders from the church world, the business and civil worlds, and the legal profession. For several years, the council has been chaired by Archbishop Joseph Ajayi of the Methodist Church Nigeria and is led by the provost, Dr. William Udotong.
When West Africa Theological Seminary came, God started to use it to link up and blend with the churches and reach out to the churches. And the impact of it has been very unique.
We exist as a seminary to carry the gospel to the unreached, and that includes the Muslim world.
Today, the 3-acre WATS property hosts 650 students with potential capacity to handle up to 1,000. As we move through the planned development stages. There are multiple centers of activity around the WATS campus. the largest theological library in West Africa, including online connections with Asbury Theological Seminary in the USA, the spacious chapel, where prayer periods and chapel services form the center of the WATS focus on spiritual formation, and dozens of classrooms and offices. The WATS Clinic, soon to be expanded to a 16-bed mini-hospital, is another place of constant activity on campus, serving not only WATS, but the surrounding community. The future expansion of the WATS campus includes the erection of multi-story buildings, expected to house an expanded library, student residence halls, and eventually a new administration building. Since 2001, WATS has enjoyed close linkages with several seminaries in the U.S., including Asbury Theological Seminary. In recent years, our relationship with Asbury has expanded to include the signing of an MOU, which covers faculty and student exchange, training of WATS facility, exchange of library resources, and collaboration in sponsoring our Doctor of Ministry program. The final test of WATS is the quality of its graduates. There are now hundreds of testimonials to the fact that WATS is making a huge difference to the lives of its graduates, both inside and outside of Nigeria.
We have in the class a mix of truly an international team. I think that to be able to have that in one location is great.
I'm always interacting with a lot of people who still speak about years later, talk about their experiences in class. So I think when a class experience stays with you years after, then that's really good.
We've enjoyed love, we've enjoyed relationship, we've enjoyed tremendous care.
It made an impact in my life, and it made impact in so many lives I know of.
The future of WATS is very bright. Within the next 5 years, we expect our enrollment to reach 1,000 students. Yet such growth can only be possible through the generous response of those who value what WATS is doing. In 1995, Friends of WATS was incorporated in the U.S. as a nonprofit 501c3 and is headquartered in close proximity to Atlanta. Through Friends of WATS, many of our overseas friends are joining generous Nigerian supporters to ensure the bright future that WATS must have to adequately serve the Nigerian church. There are 3 basic ways that God's people can get behind what WATS is doing. First, you can make a commitment to pray regularly for the ministries of WATS. Our monthly email prayer letter gives you a summary of what's happening at WATS and how you can pray for the needs of the seminary. Second, you can join others in helping us fund Friends of WATS student scholarships. And third, you may wish to consider a larger donation for the capital needs of this growing ministry. WATS has a 5-year capital development program that will enable it to serve the growing needs around it.
One of the things the church in Nigeria had always prayed to have is unity. When we come to WATS, we pray less about it. We see the practicality of it. We see Anglican ministers, we are friends, we fellowship together.
What a beauty to bring a Pentecostal, interacting with people, priests from mainland churches, sharing ideas that are essentials, that are all embracing, that are all encompassing towards the goal of evangelizing Africa.
But WATS has this unique ability and track record of training pastors and church leaders from the Gambia, Sierra Leone in West Africa to Kenya in East Africa. And so it is truly having a continental-wide impact.
To continue to count on the support of the Friends of West Africa Theological Seminary. And they will continue to see the evidences of progress, the evidences of the fact that the seed they are sowing is germinating and growing, producing fruits.
Henry Blackaby once said, identify where the Holy Spirit is working and join him. WATS is definitely an institution where the Holy Spirit is at work, and all right-thinking Christians should join the Holy Spirit in supporting WATS.
What an incredibly exciting day you and I live in for the spread of the gospel around the world. I'm grateful that God has given to West Africa Theological Seminary a very important role to play in that. The Holy Spirit is moving all across sub-Saharan Africa as never before. And over the 30-plus years that I've worked here in Africa with my Christian brothers and sisters, I can say that I'm among some of the finest people on the face of the earth. Bible Christianity may be in decline in some other areas of the world, but I can assure you that the church in Africa is growing like never before. And I believe that as you and I work together with them in their two areas of need, the training of great leadership and the discipling of believers, that we can together hit the nail on the head as never before for King Jesus.